A little while ago, I stumbled across a very nondescript cooking video posted by a very large YouTuber and streamer. His name is Asmondgold. Now, for those of you who don't know who he is, Asmongold is a very popular streamer and YouTuber who is well known for his World of Warcraft exploits and being a genuinely down-to-earth guy. Anyways, in his video, which is linked down below, he details how he cooks basically one thing and one thing only.
I know how to cook one meal, a steak.
And while you might think someone with his level of internet fame might cook up a dry-aged tomahawk or a porterhouse, well, it's actually quite the opposite. His steak of choice is actually a $2 steak, and steak is probably being a bit generous here, as from what I can tell, it looks like a thinly sliced outside round cut, which is neither a well-marbled nor tender cut of beef. He also adds in a potato, which he then microwaves, and that's it. Now, certainly, I'm not one to criticize about what anyone wants to eat. I've certainly had my fair share of cheap meals, either out of laziness or necessity. However, I wanted to give this meal a shot and then see if I could make some very basic changes that might enhance the flavor without adding too much additional time or cost. So to start, we're going to give Asmongold's version a shot and follow his recipe, which includes a very short list of ingredients. Now, naturally, the first one we're going to talk about, and the first one you're going to need, is your thin cutlet of outside round. This is from a pack of 5 for $15, which indeed is $3 per steak. However, as I am in Canada, and given how bad the exchange rate is, these could even be cheaper than $2 a steak. Not really sure. Anyways, as you can see, it's thin, it's got no marbling or fat to speak of, and clearly does not look like a particularly tender cut of meat. Hence the price point. Next, Asmon uses 3 seasonings, and 3 seasonings only. So to start, you're going to grab some freshly ground black pepper and a bit of kosher salt. This is going to act as our steak seasoning, which he uses and comes out of a mixed jar, but to my understanding, it's basically just some salt and pepper. The next seasoning is going to be some lemon pepper, which will add a nice bright note, and the amounts here aren't too important, you'll just need enough to generously season your meat. Next, you'll need about 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire, and this will add some color, but more importantly, some much needed umami flavor. Remember, this is a thin cut of meat with almost no fat, so any additional depth of flavor and fat that we're going to be able to give are key. Oh, and speaking of fat, you'll also want to grab about 1 teaspoon of butter. And there you go, that's everything you're going to need to make Asmongold's now infamous $2 steak. So with all your ingredients at hand, it is time to start prepping, and you'll want to start with your potato. So go ahead and grab that and proceed to follow the very careful instructions laid out by Asmon.
Is I take the fork and I stab the shit out of the potato and I put the bitch in the microwave.
So with the stabbing complete, head on over to the microwave, place the potato inside, give it a final loving pat on the head, and proceed to microwave for 8 minutes and 30 seconds. While that's going on, we're going to put a pan on the stove, set it to medium-high, and add a little bit of butter. The fat from the butter is definitely needed for this meal, and it'll also help brown our meat. Speaking of meat, we need to season ours. Now, I know Asmon doesn't like to touch meat and he seasons his in the pan, but I'm making the executive decision to liberally season the meat on our cutting board. And yes, I appreciate this is just one more thing to wash, but it just makes my life a lot easier. So grab a healthy pinch of kosher salt and sprinkle that on top. Then you want to drop a good pinch of freshly ground black pepper on top as well. Again, the idea here is this will mimic Asmongold's steak seasoning. Now to that, you add your other seasoning, which is going to be our lemon pepper, and this is going to add a nice bright tanginess that will go well with our Worcestershire. Once that's added, it's time to head back to our pan and drop in our steak. Now, Asmon cooks his steaks well done, something that I am truly not a fan of, but in keeping with the original and against my wishes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, he does poke some holes in the steak, which I didn't do, but arguably this could actually help tenderize the meat a little bit more, which maybe isn't a bad thing. In any case, I'm really trying to get some good color on this steak, so it's okay if we've got a few burnt bits of pepper in the pan. After about 2 or 3 minutes, give this a flip and add on your Worcestershire. This will throw off a lot of steam and help finish off our cooking, so let's cook this another 60 or so seconds, maybe adding a little bit more lemon pepper on top, and then this thing is done. So it's time to remove your steak from the heat and plate up our steak and potatoes. Unlike Asmon, I don't have any paper plates, but that's okay, we'll just have to use this regular plate. Then drop down your steamed potato and your steamy $2 steak, and there you have your very own $2 steak and potato. All we have to do now is taste this. Now, perhaps it's not the most appetizing thing you'll ever see. Certainly the well-done steak hurts my soul a bit, but it's hot, smells like beef, and has some pretty good color on it. But there is one key thing that we're missing, and that is some A1 steak sauce. So pour that down and then cut yourself a piece of meat and give this a taste. And honestly, for the most part, this is a totally serviceable steak. The texture is a bit on the chewy side, but it's got some nice beef flavor and depth from the Worcestershire and a little bit of that butter. Thanks to the thinness of the meat, the 3 seasonings really come through as well. The potato, on the other hand, is a whole other matter. In his video, Asmongold doesn't seem to add any other seasonings or condiments to his potato, and this thing really needs some love. So I'm gonna add a pinch of salt and a knob of butter. And unsurprisingly, yeah, this drastically improves the flavor. Listen, overall, yeah, this is not maybe the most appetizing meal, but it's totally fine. It takes 8.5 minutes to make, it's more than affordable, and with a bit of salt and some basic condiments, it's actually tasting okay. But I want to try to give this a little bit of a facelift, and we're going to try to do a little bit better than okay. So let's make a few minor changes that will elevate this dish and that I think even Asmongold could do. So to start, we're going to grab our same cut of meat and season with the same mixture of salt, pepper, and lemon pepper seasoning. Next, we're going to rub in our Worcestershire sauce into the meat. We're gonna let this absorb and nicely kind of caramelize in the pan once we cook it. It kind of acts like a really quick basic marinade that's gonna give a lot of flavor. Then give this a flip and season the other side simply with just salt, and you're done. So move the steak off to the side and grab your potato. Now here we're going to do 2 things differently. First, we're going to wash our potato, and second, instead of stabbing our potato, we're going to do something very chefy and grab our knife to cut our potato. You'll want to slice this into 1/2-inch sheets or so before stacking these up and cutting them lengthwise 4 times. You should have something that looks a little bit like this. Then turn these on their side and cut them into these adorable 1/4-inch cubes. With the potatoes cut, it's time to transfer these magically into our bowl. Yeah, like that. And then place these in the microwave for, you guessed it, 8 minutes and 30 seconds. With the microwave beeping incessantly, it's time to grab your spuds, which you probably could have cooked for a shorter time. Probably around 6 or 7 minutes would have been fine. While these are still hot, we're going to drizzle around 1 to 2 tablespoons of a neutral oil, in this case canola, over top. With our potatoes lightly coated in oil, we're going to want to get a pan on the stove at a medium heat and add another 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil into our pan before adding around 1 teaspoon of butter. Swirl this around until it's melted and the butter browns slightly. The second you see that butter brown, drop in those potatoes and quickly toss these around. We're doing a couple of things here. First, the oil helps not only fry our potatoes, but also keeps our butter from burning. The butter not burning allows it to brown, which adds some much needed flavor. These potatoes will shallow fry and have a wonderful crisp exterior, and they are excellent for breakfast or for tomorrow's meals. Now you will want to toss these somewhat regularly to make sure that they're well coated in our fats and to make sure that they don't stick. After about 5 or 6 minutes, the potatoes should have a deep golden color and are ready to be removed from the pan. I decided to remove the excess fat with a strainer that I had over the sink, but you could just as easily use a slotted spoon or place these on some paper towel to remove any excess oil. With the excess oil removed, you'll want to grab a bowl and dump in your spuds and drop in a healthy pinch of salt. It's really important to do this while the potatoes are still hot and a bit oily, as this allows the salt to cling to the potato. Then just give this a quick toss. Now you can really hear how crisp these potatoes are in the bowl, and on closer inspection, we can see that wonderful crispy exterior. If you really wanted to elevate these potatoes to another level, you could grate in some Parmesan cheese and add some parsley, but I won't go there today. Where I will go, however, is back to my pan, and I know washing extra dishes is a hassle, so we're using the same pan with all that wonderful flavor in it. But we're just going to add a tiny bit more oil, a little bit of butter, and turn the heat up slightly to medium-high. With our pan up to temp and our butter slightly browned, it is time to drop in our steak with the fully seasoned side down. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am not a fan of well-done steaks. Of course, with something this thin, it's almost impossible to get something medium rare that isn't simply raw, and I still want some good color. So to do that, we're going to cook on the first side for around a minute before flipping and cooking for another 30 seconds before removing from the heat. So yeah, this is going to be pretty fast, and what you'll be left with is a pan with some brown bits stuck to the bottom, and this is known as fond. Now, this is where Asmongold simply throws water on his pan to clean it, but all this fond is flavor, and we can really make a simple pan sauce by adding in just a little bit of water, scraping the pan, letting it reduce or boil off by about 1/3, and then killing the heat and adding a bit of butter. This not only makes the cleaning process easier as all those burnt bits are now unstuck, but it also helps us enhance the flavor of our meat. Of course, me being me, I got distracted and forgot to add this to the final dish, but trust me, this is a very easy way to add some more beef flavor to your meal. And speaking of that final dish, let's put this together. So grab a plate and then dump all those crispy potatoes onto your plate. Now, you don't need all of these. You could easily save half for tomorrow morning's breakfast. Eggs, potatoes, and steak certainly sounds delicious to me. In any case, the next thing you're gonna do is grab your steak and place it on top, and you're done. Well, almost done. We're gonna add some greens, specifically some broccoli. Now, I know it's an extra thing, but Asmon's never gonna see this video, and you gotta eat your vegetables. And while this is an extra step, I did actually steam these in the same pan as I cooked everything else. Of course, it was clean, but you just add a bit of water, high heat, and these are done in a few minutes. Okay, now that we've got a marginally healthier meal put together, it's time to add some A1 sauce and give this thing a taste. As you might expect, it's still a $2 steak, so it's still got a chewy texture, but letting that Worcestershire sauce absorb into the meat and cooking this more quickly really helped this be a little less chewy and a little bit more flavorful than the original version. Now, when it comes to the potato, this version of the potato is far superior to its microwave predecessor. But then again, most things that are fried in butter usually are. The crisp, crusty texture of the potato is definitely an upgrade. You get that crackly and crunchy outside, which gives way to a soft, pillowy inside, and the salt on the exterior just helps really make this whole thing stand out. And there we go, my improved version of Asmongold's $2 steak. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with his version. He cooked what he likes, the way he likes, and he did a number of things well, including using a stainless steel pan and seasoning his meat liberally. But I hope that you and possibly Asmon agree that with a few very simple changes, you too can take this basic meal a step in a more flavorful direction with a lot less effort than you think. With all that said, guys, that is the end of this video, so thank you so much for watching until the end, and as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.